It was a magical season for the Duke Blue Devils, but is it too soon to look back and call it a success?
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade. You're joining me at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making this your first listen or watch of the day, and I want to remind you, you can catch every single episode ad-free on Amazon Music. Special shout out to all the everydayers who are joining us, and of course, all the great members of the Locked On College Basketball Discord. Reminder, that link is free and it's in the show notes. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. A special show today. We got our guy JJ Jackson, the great host of Locked On Blue Devils, fresh off of some commentating on Tuesday evening, about to hit a road trip and go do some more of it, some great SEC softball action. And JJ is kind enough to fit me in between all that. JJ, buddy, it's always great to be together. Look forward to talking with you. And basically, we're just looking back at Duke's season. We're going to look ahead at next season. We got some brothers coming in, and boy, I mean that in the literal sense of brothers. And man, it's going to be a lot of fun. But JJ, here's where I want to just dive in right out of the gate. This was a wildly special season for Duke for a number of reasons. But obviously, a big part of what we count as success is what happens at the end of the season. And that's the starting point for me. And then we'll dive into the season itself a little more. But has there been enough space for Duke fans to start seeing the perspective of, my word, what a special season? Or is it too fresh to say, man, it was championship or bust and we didn't hit that mark?
Yeah, as crazy as it seems, like we're not even really to the 2-3 week mark of the season coming to a close. And so in so many ways, I do feel like it's still so fresh and not able to look back at it in more of a positive manner, right? Like the loss still stings, and the manner in which that they lost stung. That was the biggest thing that took a while to kind of decipher. And I still don't even know that we've come to a clear conclusion. Like, are you more stunned that Duke lost the game or more stunned at the manner in which they lost that Final Four game against Houston? So for me, man, I've been back and forth, and truly, I'm going to appreciate this season at some point. I'm having to tell myself that, to be so excited about what you were able to accomplish, and reminding myself how difficult it is to make a Final Four run, to win your conference, to win the conference tournament, and all of those things. But man, watching this team play together and seeing their absolute best, I still don't think there was a team that could have contended with Duke toe-to-toe when they're playing their best level of basketball. And I think a lot of Duke fans are obviously going to jump in that boat with me. What a special group it was, and it just stings that they aren't the ones that are going to be celebrating a national championship this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, gosh, the parts were all there. It was the roster make. I continue to marvel at the roster makeup. I want to get to that in a second. JJ, you talked about the ACC success. 19-1, the best ACC record ever in the 20-game era. I mean, just mowed down. What, to be fair, I guess an overmatched ACC for the most part. That's part of this. But even still, a normal ACC, this Duke team, I think, wins that by multiple games. What can you say about the consistency of this team? Because it's not just the ceiling, but being able to do it night in and night out at that kind of level.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest things that impressed me so much. And I'm glad you made that point, to go 19-1 in the league and also having double-digit wins being decided by 20 or more points within the league. That's what was great about this Duke team, is that you knew, hey, once they get going in that first half, really by the second or third media timeout of it all, with just a few minutes left in the half, the game's in control. And in the second half, they're not going to take their foot off. They're going to continue to play well and get what needs to be done to pick up the win. So their level of consistency was so impressive throughout the season. And despite the league having this perception of being down, and when you look at the numbers, it certainly was down, that didn't stop Duke at all from taking care of business when they needed to.
JJ, I know a lot of we got to go here because people would be mad at me if we didn't. Have you begun to think about where this Cooper Flagg season ranks in the annals of not just Duke history or Duke freshman history, but like national freshman history. Have you begun to process that yet?
Absolutely. I don't know that you're going to find a better freshman season for someone who didn't win a national championship, right? And so when you look at the all-time greats, Carmelo Anthony, what he did in 2003 with Syracuse was unbelievable, ultimately culminating with the championship. Anthony Davis, nearly a decade later in 2012 at Kentucky, goes all the way, wins the championship. He's the number 1 overall pick. Short of that, I don't know that there's anybody up there that had the impact on winning that Cooper Flagg had. His ability to bring it night in, night out, knowing that he's going to be the top of the scouting report. You and I talked a lot before the season. You were in kind of the Con Knippel's going to be the leading scorer. Much like I was. I didn't, I thought he's going to pick his spots here and there. Nope, he just continued to score buckets. He sets the ACC freshman scoring record with 42 points in a basketball game. He's got highlight poster dunks. He's blocking and stealing. He does everything. So truly, when I look at it, this was an all-time freshman season, not just in the history of Duke basketball that's got its own success, but in all of college basketball.
I love how you put it there, JJ, as you talked, not just with his scoring, but affecting winning in a multitude of ways. And that for box score watchers who that's all they're looking at is, did you blow up the points column every night? You're missing it if that's what you're looking at, folks. Like, go watch the dude play basketball. It's insane.
To that point, though, even still, he was the leading scorer in so many of these games for Duke, exactly. Right? So, like, he was scoring the basketball, because I know that that's what people want to point to.
Dude, what was it, the Sweet 16 game, the 30-point game, and that crazy stat line? Was it that one?
I believe so. If not, it was If not, it was his Baylor game. But yeah, he was turned up and playing so well for Duke this entire season. You're right. It was Arizona that he went off for 30 points in the Sweet 16. Yep.
Just that for me, like that on that stage, finally kicking Caleb Love to the curb.
Yeah.
JJ, another thing I want to ask you about, just looking at the season in totality, is I said this a lot last offseason, and I raised my hand and I was wrong. And because of that, like I have gushed throughout the season, is I was worried about how the roster construction was going to come together, because there was this multitude of crazy talented freshmen. And then Coach Scheyer and staff were bringing in multiple experienced upperclassmen players that I worried, like, are they going to be willing to accept the role that they're given, knowing that a lot of the freshmen are going to be the highlight packages. And some of those can, like Sion ends up starting, right? And some other things like that. But boy, I was just so impressed with Mason Gillis and Malik Brown and Sion and their ability to accept the roles that they were handed as part of this team, to allow Cooper and Con and Common to shine at the way that they did. Like, I mean, when you think about the way that this roster is put together, is there anything that could have been better to elevate it?
No, I really don't. I mean, it really was the perfect roster put together, and it paid off with the run that they had and the great 35-4. And again, I know we're talking about success or not with it, the ending being what it is, but truly, when you look at trying to get all of these new players together, Duke was a team that only had 2 players back from the prior year in Caleb Foster and Tyrese Proctor. And even beyond the upperclassmen that added in, it's not a guarantee that your freshman classes are going to play so well together, and that they're going to work and they're going to be able to adjust to the college game as well as they did. So this was the perfect roster. It benefited by not having a single scholarship player standing under 6'5", right? The size was certainly intimidating and daunting, and Duke truly was able to switch 1 through 5 defensively. So many teams like to say that they can, but they don't in reality. That's what Duke did. And so, yeah, this was an unbelievable basketball team.
Props to Common Malawatch for his ability to do that, man, because it was something special. And look, not every bus team, like, they look good getting off the bus. Not every one of those is a good basketball team, but this one certainly was. And so, JJ, to that point, as best as you can here, 2+ weeks removed from the championship game. No, good grief. 1 week removed from the championship game, like 9 days. My goodness. How has it been only that short a time? Put it in perspective as best you can right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a successful season that had a heartbreaking finish, right? A season that you were able to go all the way to college basketball's mountaintop, the final island there at the Final Four with the chance to be a national championship. And it was just an unfortunate collapse. It was historic. It was unprecedented. You didn't think a team with a 6-point lead with 30 seconds to go is going to find a way to lose this thing when they had a 14-point lead at one point. They only make one shot down the final 10 and a half minutes. Like all of that still is so fresh and stings so much. But at the end of the day, it is so hard to win in this sport. And in a season in which there were 4 Final Four teams that had top 10 historic KenPom ratings in this, somebody was going to be a little hurt that they weren't able to win it at the end of the day. And so I'm certainly trying to put out the glass half full approach in all of this, understanding how difficult it is to make it to the Final Four. Yes, I wanted Duke to win. Yes, it stings, and it's going to take a while for me to get over the loss, so to speak. But then when I take a moment to grow up, put a smile on my face, and really soak it all in, like, man, this was a really awesome team to watch. And what a season, man.
What a season indeed. And the good news for Duke is it's not one of those schools where it's like, well, we had that one shot every 20 years. The expectation is to do it all over again next year. And there's a nice little crop of young men coming in to help out in that cause. We're going to look ahead to the 25-26 season for the Duke Blue Devils coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about FanDuel, the NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you're going to get $250 in bonus bets if that bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy. So whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props, man, it's so much fun. From three-pointers to steals to assists to whatever it is, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Go check it out. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same game parlay for a chance to win even bigger. Look, we just talked about Duke was so close last year. Well, good news, JJ Jackson and all you Blue Devils fans out there. FanDuel's national championship odds are out for next season, and Duke Blue Devils lead the way right now at plus 1,000, followed by Purdue and Houston at plus 1,200. And Blue Devils fans will be glad and thrilled to know that the Tar Heels are way back at plus 4,000. So there you go. Go check it all out at FanDuel. Get in on that Duke Blue Devil action. Don't miss out. Head on over to FanDuel.com right now and claim your shot at $250 in bonus bets today. All right, Isaac Schade, joined by our guy, JJ Jackson, the host of Locked On Blue Devils. We're going to turn our attention ahead to the 2025-26 season, where obviously, as is typically the case at Duke in the one-and-done era, several dudes out the door, a whole new crop coming in to replace them. JJ, before we look ahead, let's look at the guys who either we already know are out or we're waiting decisions on. Who has already announced their intentions to either enter the transfer portal or the NBA draft?
Yeah, this is where Duke is really unique right now from what I'm seeing across the sport. Nobody has said anything. At the time you and I are talking here and on this Wednesday morning that people are getting a chance to hear this conversation for us, Isaac, no one has said a word with what they're doing. So now there are likely draft declarations coming for guys that are projected to be lottery picks, talking about Cooper Flagg, the number 1 overall pick in the draft, Con Knipple, Kamon Malawach. Tyrese Proctor has a very interesting decision to make himself if he wants to go off and play at the NBA level. And then you've got easy guys that are going to be exiting from the Duke team with the likes of Sion James and Mason Gillis because their eligibility has come to a close. Sure. But in terms of decisions being made, man, here we are. We're looking at deadlines to enter the portal. We're also looking at that April 26th early entry deadline for the NBA draft. And it's radio silence on the Duke front, man.
It's so weird as I've been looking at that hit me the other day. I was like, I mean, as you said, like Sion, yep, we know. Mason, yep. We know. They don't have to say anything, but tweet, like nothing, man. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And so, like, I don't remember seeing anything like this in this day and age. And so, like, I know there's been stuff about like, oh man, we're gonna try to throw the whole bank at Cooper. I just don't see a world in which it makes sense for him to come back to school.
I don't either.
Like, it just doesn't seem right. But like, again, as you said, with both Con Knipple and Common Malawach, they're lottery picks as well. Like, yes, I know in this day and age, you can make a whole butt ton of money coming back to school, but not lottery money, right? Like,
Yeah.
those guys have to be out the door, right?
Yeah, I would think so. And look, also from the Duke perspective, like we're used to sending guys off to the league each and every year. That's what this program has done for over a decade running now at this point. We're used to kind of the format of how this works, that at some point a video is going to be released that Duke basketball produces. That's the player announcing that they're going to go play for Duke. It's going to cut in a couple of highlights that they had throughout the season. It's going to have a comment from Jon Scheyer about how incredible this player was, what he meant to the brotherhood, and all these various things. And then he's going to make the decision to declare for the NBA draft. None of that's been released yet, though. And that's kind of the crazy thing, is that by now you would feel as though it's happening. I do think we're getting close to the finish line just because of those deadlines fastly approaching, and you've got to make decisions at this point. But yeah, I think they're headed off to the NBA. They just haven't officially declared it yet.
What do you think you mentioned Tyrese Proctor's big decision, and that is probably the most intriguing to me of Duke's entire roster. If you're Tyrese Proctor, what are you processing, and what would you, JJ Jackson, wearing a Tyrese Proctor mask, ultimately decide to do?
Yeah, I think you really got to look at what you're going to be making at the next level and kind of hearing where you're expected to be drafted. This is somebody who mightily improved from his sophomore season to his junior year. Proctor had a great season for Duke this year, really shot it well from the outside, played his tail off on the defensive end of the floor, helped in so many different ways for the Duke team to be a winner. But ultimately, you look at where he's kind of slotted to go in draft settings, and oftentimes it's not until you get into the second round. And so when that's the case, and when you are a guy who's played for Jon Scheyer, every 3 years that he's been a head basketball coach, he's had Tyrese Proctor on his roster. They've got such a special bond. And so for that reason, I would anticipate a return, possibly even, for Tyrese Proctor. There's chatter out there, much like there was last year, although it was much louder last year when the season came to a close, that maybe he transfers. But again, given that relationship with him and Scheyer, I don't see him playing college basketball elsewhere other than at Duke University. If I had to pick here today, I'm starting to feel more optimistic about Proctor's chances of returning to Durham for his senior season.
What about Isaiah Evans, JJ? Because I think because of, like he didn't really get much run there, like in the Final Four, and I think a lot of people, and this happens when you've got so much, talented depth sitting on the bench. It's just the nature of the beast. I think a lot of people just assumed, well, you didn't get much run, so you're going to be out the door. I feel like that sentiment has kind of died down. I've been hearing less of that, and it feels like maybe there is more sentiment now that he'll hang out in Durham for another year. What are you hearing on Isaiah Evans' decision?
I certainly hope that's the case. I know that you love numbers just as much as I do, and to kind of put it in perspective with what he was able to do, Isaiah Evans played 19 minutes in the round of 64 game that Duke had against Mount St. Mary's. The next 4 games to end the season, he played 19 combined minutes.
No way. Wow.
And so, he just was not a part of what Duke was doing in those tournament games. And part of it, because what he was asked to do throughout the course of the season was come in and knock down shots from the outside. If they weren't falling, then, there's not much need for you to be out here on the floor. He was a little limited defensively early on, but to his credit, put a lot of work in and getting better in that department. But when you look at a guy who 82% of his shot attempts this year on 150 shot sample size were from 3-point range, it's very calculated what this guy's going to do when he comes into the basketball game. Now, in terms of his upcoming decision, this is a massive one. This is a guy that I think is absolutely bound for stardom at Duke if he were to return for his sophomore season. Although I know that there are schools out there throughout the entire season that saw a game like he had against Auburn when he really wasn't playing at all and want to start the fanfare for him to come to their program. I know those phone calls are coming. I know they're coming from Raleigh, even down the road with NC State. So I would not be surprised if Isaiah Evans ultimately makes that decision to transfer. He's also in draft conversations too, though. That's why he's kind of the big domino that Duke shot this offseason in terms of a decision to be made. What do you think?
I initially, like day after the championship game, if you had asked me that, I would have said he's going to transfer.
Yeah.
Today, I think Isaiah Evans stays. I really do, JJ.
I love it.
It just seems to make sense, right? Assuming he makes the jumps that you need to as a sophomore, assuming that the conversations with the staff lead him to believe that he's going to get a lot of run next year. Why would you leave? Why would you leave, man? It wouldn't make sense to me. Well, look, we've got more personnel conversations to have. There's at least one more critical cog that is out the door, and it ain't a player, it's a coach. We got to talk about that. And let's look at this incoming crop of players as well. We'll do all that coming up to wrap the show in just a second. JJ, we talked about a couple guys we know are out the door because they're out of eligibility. Another guy we know is out the door because he left to go coach another team before the season was done, and that's Jay Lucas, who is off to replace Jim Larrañaga at Miami. I love this move for him. I love that he's able to step into being a head coach. He's a wildly successful recruiter. I think he's going to do great. And let's look big picture at the ACC. I think that's going to be great for the ACC. Obviously a blow to Duke, though.
No doubt.
How does his departure affect the Blue Devils going forward?
I mean, he was the lead recruiter. He was an associate head coach. He was the defensive coordinator of Jon Scheyer's staff, and it's been a defense that has been so connected over the last few seasons that he's been there. When Jon Scheyer got the job, the Jay Lucas hire was the one that kind of signaled the alarms were going off, because he hired somebody that had no brotherhood connection whatsoever, which really wasn't a Coach K staple during his time as a head coach, and man, did it work. This guy has been known as one of the absolute best recruiters in the sport. He certainly did that once he got to Duke. He played a large part in the Cooper Flagg commitment and getting him to be a part of this program. He was a big reason why the Boozer twins ended up coming to Duke for this upcoming season, and now there's such an interesting twist in that dynamic with Miami being the other finalist for that one. But it's going to be a major seat that Jon Scheyer's got to replace. And to your point, that's something that we've been talking about these last few days over at Locked On Blue Devils. Who's that going to be? And there's not much noise there at all. I think this probably could be something that maybe takes a few weeks to finally get finalized.
All right. So nobody hired to replace Jay Lucas yet on the Duke staff, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Very good. Now,
the interesting wrinkle, though, that a lot of people have been talking about is Jay Lucas, his first assistant coach that he hired at Miami was the head boys basketball coach at Christopher Columbus High School there in South Florida, where the Boozer Twins played. And so immediately you're like, oh my goodness, wow, great hire for Jay Lucas. But then you worry about the Boozers and what's going there. We had Nike Hoop Summit and the McDonald's All-American game over the last few days, and they have 100% reaffirmed their commitments to Duke basketball and the brotherhood, which is awesome from the Duke perspective. But a bit of an outside the box hire there for Jay Lucas, and a good job for him getting his staff put together.
It just feels to me, JJ, like going out the door, it would almost be like an NDA type of situation where John would not let Jay, like, hey, not only can you, I want you to go do this because it's great for your career, but hear me say, Cameron and Caden Boozer are Duke Blue Devils, and you stay away, right? Like, I just don't see how he would let him.
I don't either.
Pull that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, JJ, everybody knows about these two guys, about Cam, maybe less about Caden just because of the Cameron headlines. But beyond those two guys, just tell us a little bit about the other freshmen coming into this Duke squad.
Yeah, two more freshmen to be aware of right now as we speak. It's Shelton Henderson and Nicholas Aminia. Shelton Henderson from the Houston, Texas area. Another interesting player that Jon Scheyer and Jay Lucas probably had to have the conversation about, hey, he's ours. He's a Duke Blue Devil. Shelton Henderson played for the JL3, the Lucas family AAU team, and he went to high school at Bel Air, where Jay Lucas went to high school there in the Texas area. So they've got that long-standing connection with one another. Feels like he's going to be able to come and play for Duke this upcoming season. Big frame, going to be able to be a big-time playmaker for the Blue Devils. And then the other freshman that they've got coming in is Nicholas Aminia from Harvard Westlake out in California. He's an absolute dead-eye shooter from the outside. In the Nike Hoop Summit games, though, you saw him being able to put the ball on the deck. Also had a couple of really tough offensive rebounds on the inside as well. I think he's going to be a big-time playmaker for this Duke team, too. So there are those four players, and then the big elephant in the room is the last uncommitted player in the class of 2025 and Nate Ament, and Duke is certainly kind of in the race there to see where he ends up. Although the big conversation right now is there a world in which Isaiah Evans and Nate Ament both come to Duke for this upcoming season? To me, that feels far-fetched.
So in that scenario, do you think that would be Isaiah leaving or Nate committing elsewhere?
I think it would be Isaiah leaving,
Okay.
and then Nate Ament coming in. Yeah.
Interesting, man. That dynamic's going to be really interesting to see play out. JJ, as you look ahead at the scope of this roster, and again, I know right now we don't know it all, right?
Yeah.
But let's assume that Cooper Flagg's out the door. Let's assume that Con Knippel's out the door. Let's assume that Common Malawach is out the door. Do you think that's fair to say?
Yes.
And then beyond that, I think there's a lot that's up in the air. But as you look at a roster without those three, where do you see holes right now that maybe need to be filled in the portal?
I think an experienced guard would certainly help if you're not going to be able to get somebody like Tyrese Proctor back, or even Caleb Foster, who's due to return for his junior season, although he hasn't necessarily said anything. You'd be asking Caden Boozer, a 5-star point guard, coming in, but he's just a freshman, and that's a big kind of responsibility to come in and be ready to run the show at the college level. That would be kind of those one areas for me. And then beyond that, depth in the front court. Once again, we saw the Malik Brown injuries that Duke had to deal with this season. He hasn't made a decision yet, although it appears likely that he's going to come back to Duke for his senior season. That'd be massive for the Blue Devils. Pat Gongba expected to come back for his sophomore year. Really impressed with what he was able to do down the stretch there in limited minutes. But he also was delayed out the gates because of an injury. So given the injury histories of those guys, I think that other question mark, an experienced guard, and then adding some depth in the front court, I think are going to be key for this Duke team.
And it's interesting because I see a world in which Pat Gongba kind of leapfrogs Malik Brown and is the starting five with Malik as backup again, which, I mean, clearly he was okay with. He did it all this past year because, I mean, I don't see a world in which Cam Boozer's not the starting four, right? Like, that just makes sense.
That's what I would project today.
I mean, those three dudes, give me that all day long with the strides that Gongba made as he was getting healthy and getting going. And then, I mean, it's just, there's a lot of possibility. JJ, one last question I want to ask you is, we haven't really talked about the Jon Scheyer of it all, right? Coming now into, good grief, this is year 4. Wow, coming up. You know, I think we thought he would make it at least to the national championship game, if not be a national champion, based on how things were headed very recently. But he is now a Final Four coach. That itself is a thing. From what you've seen from Coach Scheyer in his first 3 years, does it seem like he is the Duke head basketball coach for the next several decades? Because it feels like that's where the train's heading to me.
100%. I think it's hard to to go several decades there in that regard, but like for a really long foreseeable future, I don't know that we're going to see kind of the Coach K, the Jim Boeheim, these lifers in this. I could be totally wrong on that. It helps that Jon Scheyer did start at 33 years old as a head basketball coach at Duke if he wants to kind of build up that running there. But I don't see a change being made anytime soon. I think he's truly committed. I think he is as competitive as anybody that there is. This Final Four loss is going to eat at him for the rest of his life, unfortunately, it not going his way. And I know that he wants to get into championship building mode right away, because we talked expectations a little bit earlier in the season. At a program like Duke, the expectation is a national championship every single season. There are only a few schools, I'm sure multiple schools want to say that. There are only a few schools that can truly add up to that and that be a reality, right? And the kings of the ACC with Duke and the Tar Heels, I mean, that's kind of the expectation that you walk into each and every season. He's definitely the right man of the job. And what he's doing on the recruiting trail year by year, getting better. He's been so much fun to watch, man.
And I'm right with you. And our sport needs that longevity, right? And it just, as you said, him getting such a young start with it, I just think there's a lot of hope and a lot of potential for Duke and for what he could be for an ACC that is devoid of elder statesmen now. And we need to see that replenished at what is historically one of the best, if not the best, conferences in all of college basketball. And it seems like Jon Scheyer is well on his way to being a big part of that conversation. Can't wait to see how he cements himself and the program's legacy going forward. JJ Jackson, man, thank you for your time as always. Folks, if you do not already follow him, make sure you go do so. _JJ_Jackson_. We got 3 of them in between everything, all the bookends and all the in-betweens. Go check it out. Make sure you give Locked On Blue Devils a great listen. JJ is going to have you primed and ready with all of the personnel news that's going on, because it's coming. It's got to be coming. It's like a bottleneck, and it's going to burst at some point soon here. So, JJ, can't wait to talk more throughout the summer as we put this roster into full focus.
Thanks for letting me stop by today, Isaac. Really appreciate it. Go Duke.
Go Duke. If you've not followed the show already on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you've not joined the Locked On College Basketball Discord, make sure you do that right now. The link is in the show notes. As always, we got to say apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wild Popes. Shouts to Mick Bruins. And until tomorrow, peace.